You weren't sure initially, you had that whole imposter syndrome for yourself when you were thinking about starting your practice. So what helped you get over that, or how did you manage those emotions, those feelings? Yeah.
So I think it just changes over time, honestly. And so basically, when I first started the company, I was like, oh, I'm not a leader. I'm just a colleague. Like, oh, I don't really like, I'm not your manager. I just like, I'm your colleague. And I really had a hard time seeing myself in the leadership role because I felt like I didn't have the skill set to be a leader. And so I kept looking for examples of what leadership was. And I would read books on leadership, and I would read about other entrepreneurs, and I would like see friends running their companies and think, well, that's a leader. I'm not a leader. And only when I really started exploring what leadership means to me was I really able to say, oh, I am a leader. And there's no cookie cutter version of what a leader looks like. And so initially I used to think, am I wearing the right outfit to play the part? And that was both as a therapist and, as a leader of the growing company. And, I would focus on these things that I thought demonstrated leadership, when in reality, I was demonstrating it every day. And so I was the visionary of the business. I had the ideas. I thought about how we were going to grow it and scale the company. I really love translating vision into reality. And so how could I guess, encourage my team to see the same path that I wanted to move on and want to go there with me? How could I encourage my team to innovate in a way that might feel uncomfortable to them, but they might find safety knowing that I'm on the path with them? And so I started to really think about, how do I fit into leadership versus how do I not fit into leadership, which is where I started. And I would challenge the imposter. So when I caught myself thinking, well, I'm not a leader, like this man is a leader, and he wakes up at 5 a.m. and goes to the gym and has the miracle morning and, has all the savings in the bank. Like I just had this idea probably of what I saw in movies. I would say, no, there's so many other leaders in this world who aren't that. I don't want or need to be that type of leader. I need to figure out who I want to be in terms of my role as leader in the company. And so I really I look for evidence when I feel the inner imposter showing up that makes, those imposter thoughts, like I'm not good enough, or I don't know what I'm doing, or who am I to be here? I look for evidence against those thoughts when they come up. So I say, I belong here. I've worked really hard to get here. No one's perfect. I make mistakes too, and I learn from them. And then I just practice like everybody else needs to in challenging those unhelpful thoughts. I practice, I look at evidence. So, I save emails that people send me in my praise email folder, where I'm like, sometimes if I'm having a hard day, I go back and I'm like, oh yeah, I did do a good job 2 years ago on a presentation. I'm like, yeah, I can speak. I had a former client reach out on the weekend asking for recommendations for therapists on my team. And I was like, right, people, who seek therapy from my company really value my expertise and value the team that I've created. And so all of us can use those reminders from time to time, myself included. So that's how I challenge it. I just look for the evidence.
Yeah, which we often forget, right? We're so tied into our own thoughts. And we have advice for our friends or for other people around us, but when it comes to ourselves, it's so different.
Yes, it's so true. That mean roommate in my head is so much meaner than it would ever be to anyone else. And so I would never say to my friend, are you sure you're going to wear that sweater on the interview? But in my head, I'm like, oh, are you sure you want to wear that? It is that practice that we have to take to love ourselves just as much and give ourselves that same level of care that we give to people we love.
Yeah. And you mentioned, being a visionary, and I think visionaries are so great. They change the world. I'm curious, when you started this, when you started your solo practice, what was that vision you had in mind at that time? Do you remember, or is there some?
Yeah, I remember it so well because it kind of came as a catalyst for me in a few ways. So I had launched a private practice, as I said, quite early on. right out of grad school, and it was like slow, and I had a mentor, and I thought like, okay, I'm just going to see a few clients a week and work a full-time job. And then I was working this full-time job. Obviously jobs can envelope our time. And so I didn't have as much time as I wanted to invest in the practice. And I had to start thinking, okay, if I'm serious about this, how am I going to invest? And I started working evenings and weekends. And I remember the thought of like, wow, like I love this work. I love it. I wish I didn't have to be at my full-time job because it's taking time away from being at the job that I love. And so at the time I wasn't feeling a lot of risk because I had the stability of the golden handcuffs of a pension and benefits and a full-time job. But at the same time, I felt like I wasn't giving myself what I really needed. And so it was that voice saying, well, here's what you should want. You should want the golden handcuffs. But in my head, I was like, but this is what I really want, this other thing over here. And so when I first started ramping up, I remember thinking, I'm going to leave this full-time job. I'm going to leave this full-time job. And then unfortunately, right around the time I had initially wanted to leave, I gave myself a year and I was like, oh, we're getting closer to that year. I got a concussion. And so I ended up being off of the full-time job for about 8 months. And it was honestly the hardest thing ever, but also the best thing ever, because it showed me that, you know, why am I investing in things that don't bring me value when really, you know, life is kind of short. And really, I wasn't looking forward to going back to the full-time job at all, but I was like antsy to get back to practice and feel connection to clients. And so I remember the anxiety I felt around that time when it came to how am I going to leave this job? How am I going to like talk to my manager? And like my manager is going to think like, are you nuts, leaving like this full-time job with a pension and benefits at 26? 27 maybe, I forget how old I was. I literally was like, oh, and I had a little family pressure where my dad is from the generation where you want stability. And so I really remember how hard it was, but at the same time I remember thinking, I want to have impact. And in this job that I'm in, I don't feel like I can have the impact that I want. It was quite bureaucratic. I felt like I needed to give myself time to have impact. And the only way I was going to get that time is if I left that job. And so it was again, that time pressure, which was, you know, there's only so much time and I can't really grow what I really love if I'm investing my time elsewhere. And so I made the leap, but there is no thing that if you're leaving a full-time job to do your own thing or a part-time job or switching jobs, that is going to be like, great, you've made the right decision. There is going to be no button that you push that's like, okay, you're good now. You are going to feel anxious and scared and have all those feelings like, what if I fail? And what if I'm leaving? And that's really normal because, you know, it's you're launching into uncertainty, you're making a change. But for me, I just decided, you know, I have to trust myself and I have to trust my business. And so I feel really lucky that, you know, it happened quick for me. So at first, when I left the full-time job, I was like, I just need to build my practice to be the equivalent of like sustaining a salary. And then next it became within 3 months, I was full. And it suddenly became, oh, I have all these other decisions to make. So it happened really quickly, to be honest. And I'm grateful for it. But had I not had the concussion, that kind of just shifted my perspective a little bit. I might not have acted on it. I might have said, you know, I like this stability and 4 weeks vacation. And, you know, it was a big decision. But at the same time, I just knew that I had more to give that I wanted to give. And I think for many of us, that's hard, where we're like, how do I listen to what I want to do versus what's telling me what I should do? And so I'm kind of lucky that I just, at that time, I was in the right place to just, I felt supported. I had a good community and I just said, I'm just going to go for it. And worst case scenario, I'll go crawling back to that old job or I'll apply for a new job and I can do that. And so that's how I got through it. But yeah, I didn't know the company was going to be what it was today. I just knew that I really wanted to have impact in the mental health space.